Hey guys, this is Mandy here, also known as Mandy Death. You might see my name like that on the forums and whatnot. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do an impromptu video. One of the things I've noticed is that there's a whole bunch of videos about how to get into, RC as a hobby, RC drifting, but not a lot that really specializes in rear-wheel drive RC drift cars. So what I want to go ahead and do here is, as opposed to typing out a list, I'm just going to do a video here and talk about some of the rear-wheel drive chassis that are available on the market currently, what you need to build your rear-wheel drive RC chassis, and we'll go ahead and talk about that here in this video. So just to start off, there's two kinds of RC cars that you're really going to find. So you're going to find your ready to run, so normally you'll see that abbreviated as RTR. Almost ready to run, which is going to be pretty much everything you need, but you might need a couple of things there. And lastly, you're going to have, kind of do-it-yourself kind of thing. What I'm going to recommend is doing it yourself. If you get a ready-to-run car, as far as I know, there is no completely ready-to-run or almost ready-to-run rear-wheel drive RC drift car. So we'll talk about the components that you really need in order to get going with rear-wheel drive RC drifting. So, main things you're going to need. Of course, you're going to need a chassis. So, chassis is pretty much the car itself. And I'll actually go ahead and grab mine over here, so we can go ahead and talk about that. So, this is my chassis here. We won't look too much into this, but obviously you have this shell. Shell is kind of a cosmetic thing. Obviously you're going to pick your own. I have this Mazda RX-7 FC here. So you have your chassis. Chassis is essentially just the car itself, the actual roller, as you might say, for your RC drift car. So that's one of the things you're going to need. Chassis. The shell you could always buy. A lot of times you could find pre-painted ones if you don't know how to paint them, because it can be its own task. So you're going to have that, of course. You're going to have your battery, which is going to power everything. I have mine mounted up here. You're going to need a speed controller, which is essentially it powers your motor. So you're going to need a speed controller and a motor. Powers your motor, powers your servo, and all the rest of your electronics, your receiver. You're going to need a servo, which is going to control your steering. And lastly, you're going to need a remote. I have mine in the case right now, but it's going to be one of those hand-on throttle things. So we'll go ahead and take notes here. So you need your chassis, you need battery, you need your ESC or your speed control, you're going to need a servo, and you're going to need a remote. So these are the 5 things we're going to need to actually build our drift car. So the most important thing here is going to be the chassis. That's going to be what you're going to build your foundation upon. A lot of people would argue that the electronics are important as well, and we'll go ahead and touch base on that. It's definitely an important part of what you're going to use here. Now, one of the other things I kind of neglected to mention here is you're going to need a gyro. So, rear-wheel drive RC cars, they get their stability from the gyro. It doesn't drive the car for you. It doesn't take the skill away from RC drifting. It's just something that you need because you don't have the same reaction times you would have in a full-size car, so the gyro helps compensate for that. And mine I have kind of tucked underneath my receiver for that. And also looking at the remote, you're going to need a receiver to go with it. Normally they come bundled, so not too much of a deal there. Alright, so starting off the chassis, we're going to take a look at some of the chassis that are available in the market right now. So, a couple of big ones here, and I have the websites pulled up here on the other side of my screen, so we'll go ahead and take a look at those. So I have Black Star Hobbies pulled up. They are the biggest MST retailer in the US here, and they have an excellent selection of rear-wheel drive RC drift cars for beginners and experts alike. So I went ahead and pulled up their page over here, and we'll go ahead and make this full screen here. So, one of the first ones I have pulled up here, this is the fxx-d S. The S is the beginner version. They also have a VIP, which is aluminum and carbon if you're looking to spend a little bit more to get in the hobby. But we're going to start on the lower end here, and maybe I'll go ahead and do a video about some of the more expensive chassis here in the future. So this is going to be one of the cheapest chassis that's available. So the main benefit of this chassis, and we're going to go over a couple of them so you can figure out which is the right one for you. The best part about the fxx-d S is that it shares almost all of the components with the VIP version. Well, actually, we'll go ahead and we'll pull up the VIP version here and take a look at that. I'm a big fan of the red one, so we'll pull up that one over here. So as you can see, this is carbon aluminum, $660, a lot more expensive here. But if we look at the plastic one, it actually uses almost all the same components. So the real benefit here is for 165 bucks, it gets you in the door. And then if you want to, down the road, you can upgrade this car. You don't have to buy a whole new car. You can just buy the aluminum pieces. You could buy the carbon plates. It's a little bit cheaper and easier to just go ahead and buy it outright like this. But if you want to, dip your feet in the water, see if let's go see RWD here. It's a little bit easier, rolls off the tongue. Drift car, then fxx-d is going to be a great option for you. A couple of things about it. I also want to talk about some of the stronger and weaker points about all the chassis here. I've had experience with pretty much all of them first person. The only glaring issue with the fxx-d is, again, because it's plastic, there are some components on it that have a little bit of flex that are likely to break. The only real issue with the fxx-d is the steering bridge. So the actual, let's see if we have a little bit of a closer view over here. We'll go ahead and zoom in. This little, mousing it on the screen, this little steering bridge over here has a likelihood of flexing and or breaking. So I would recommend upgrading that to the aluminum one right away if you are purchasing this chassis. Of course, Blackstar Hobbies has all the parts for it, all the hop-ups, upgrades in aluminum and carbon, so you can always look for them there. There's also an fxx-d IFS. The main difference on this one is it has these, the shocks are mounted on the top. It's independent front suspension system on that. A couple benefits: gives you a little bit more steering clearance, and it also increases the traction on the front end of the car, which is something you're going to want when you're drifting. So for $10 more, you get that. And for the extra 10 bucks, I'd highly recommend picking up the IFS version instead, but either one goes perfectly fine. So we'll go back over to our list here. Actually, let me do this. We'll make this small. So one of our options there, we have the fxx-ds, and we also have the IFS version of that. And so that starts at $165. The next chassis we're going to look at is going to be the, let me find it over here. It's going to be the 3 Racing Sakura D4. So now there's 2 versions of this. There's an all-wheel drive version, but of course we're going to be looking at the rear-wheel drive version. So for this chassis, this is one of the newest rear-wheel drive chassis on the block. Now, a couple of great things about this chassis is it is dirt cheap. I'm looking at RC Mart here. So RC Mart for the D4, it's $108. I guess they have it on sale now because I know it was initially $130. $108 and free shipping. So this is going to be the cheapest rear-wheel drive car that you can purchase. Now, this car in particular, I haven't had the opportunity to see firsthand. I've had experience with the D3, which is the previous version, was only all-wheel drive. Some people have converted it to rear-wheel drive with success, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of parts to put into that. So at $108, you just cannot beat that price on a rear-wheel drive RC drift car. It comes with some things that you won't see on other cars in this price range. So there's actually aluminum parts on this chassis. And normally for a complete plastic chassis at this price point, you won't see any aluminum parts, but this one is an okay amount here. Again, with the steering system, it's plastic here, it has aluminum extensions. It seems more durable just because of the way that it's set up with an aluminum extension instead of having an entire plastic arm compared to the FXX. And one of the other things is that this car is belt driven as opposed to shaft driven. It's going to be more of a preference thing when it comes to that. I find the belt driven cars are a little bit smoother in terms of drifting compared to the shaft driven ones. I actually drive a shaft driven one personally, and I kind of miss the belt one from time to time. So for this car, one of the cool things is it has a rear midship motor layout, which means it has some of the weight towards the back, and also has a really cool battery tray where you can actually put the battery on the back of the car for extra rear weight, or you can put it in front of the motor for more front mid weight on that chassis. It has a pretty good steering angle. The Ackerman is going to need a little bit of adjustment, and this is going to be things that you'll get with tuning, but again, we're just kind of getting in the door here. Overall, this price, if you are on an extreme budget, I would say that the D4 is going to be the car for you. And so we'll go ahead and put that on the list. So we have the Sakura D4, and we'll go ahead and put the brands here. So it's MST makes fxx-ds, 3 Racing makes the Sakura D4, and that one is 108. I'll put 109 here just to make life easy, or 110. We're rounding it up here. Now, one of the really cool things is that RC Mart, they do offer some bundle deals here. So if you look for the Sakura D4 on their website, you're going to see a whole bunch of options here. And again, you're going to want to look at the rear-wheel drive one, which is actually cheaper than the all-wheel drive one. You'll see that they also have a couple of bundles. So $108 gets you the car itself. For $160, you get a gyro, which you're going to need for drifting. And you also get a limited edition OMG servo there. It looks kind of cool and has a pink color to kind of match the chassis there, and also some balancing weights. Not necessarily something you need, but it's a little cool there. It looks like a NOS bottle. I've actually had them before. So for $60 more, you get the gyro and you get the servo. It's a really good deal actually. And OMG makes really great servos. Deagle Racing makes a good gyro. Gyro is pretty much all. I don't want to say they're all the same. There's little subtle differences between it, but for starting off, anyone's going to go ahead and do the job for you. So for $160, that's definitely something you want to go ahead and take a look at. The next chassis we're going to go ahead and take a look at, it's Deagle Racing. So Deagle Racing, they actually have a plethora of chassis you can choose from. Now, there's some benefits and there's some downsides when you look at Deagle Racing chassis. So the benefit of an Deagle Racing chassis is the last 2 chassis we looked at primarily plastic. These chassis here, they are aluminum and carbon. So it's the same thing. Like if we look at, we go back to the MST, the FXX. For $660, this is aluminum and carbon. For an Deagle Racing chassis, we'll go ahead and let's see if we can find this. The other thing is their website's a little bit tricky to navigate at times. So let's see, drift cars. We're looking for a drift car kit, right? And here we go. Okay, perfect. So we'll take a look at the TTO2 here because that is right here. All right, so this is the TTO2 FRD by Deagle Racing here, and we'll go ahead and zoom in on this a little bit. So this again, full aluminum, full carbon. There's some exceptions here, like the rear gearbox. It is plastic. They do have aluminum upgrade options for that. But for $250, so it's a lot more expensive than the plastic ones, you get a car with similar components to a $660 FXX. So if you're into the bling factor, if you want those color options, and this comes in blue and gold, it's a good option. But you're going to be spending more than one of the plastic alternatives from MST or 3 Racing. So $251. A couple of benefits and downsides to this chassis. There's some other Deagle Racing ones that we could look at as well. This chassis, the quality control I wouldn't say is as high as MST chassis. There are some little things that need adjustment. Generally the ball ends and the ball cups, they're either too loose or too tight and need some adjustment because there's too much play in the steering. Other than that, the dampers or the little shocks, the springs, they aren't. Well, from what I've heard, there's supposed to be some kind of revisions to them as of late, which makes them higher quality. But the ones in the past, their shocks were just poorly assembled. They didn't really hold the fluids well. They didn't rebound well. But from what I understand, they're supposed to be improved, so it might not be as much of an issue as it was in the past. In addition to the TTO2 FRD, which they offer, they also have a couple of other motor layouts. So let's see if we can find them here. So one of them is the R31. Let's see if I put R31 rear-wheel drive, if it shows up here. No. And this is one of the slight downsides to Deagle's website. It's kind of tricky to find what you actually want to. Let's see here. Yeah, because Drift Car Kit, we just looked at that. And it's only showing us TTO2s. Let's try this. R31 FM. And nope, nothing there. What about this? Let's try TO5. And alright, it's a laundry list item. So we'll go ahead and do this the Google way here. And Deagle Racing R31 rear wheel drive. Okay. So it's going to be easier to find it on Google, oddly enough, as opposed to browsing through their website. And you'll find when it comes to a lot of parts, it's hard to find them on the website unless you actually have the part number. So it's good if you have somebody you can reach out to get those information. So this is R31 rear-wheel drive. This is also a belt-driven chassis. This one has a front motor layout to it. Very similar. It's a little bit cheaper, so $209 for that one. And this is one of the first ones that had the actual issues with the ball cups, the ball studs, the dampers. So those are things you might look at getting replaced down the road. And the last one we'll look at here is the Deagle Racing TA05 rear-wheel drive. This one is actually a front midship layout as opposed to a rear midship like the Sakura D4. This one $209. So again, in that same price range as the other Eagle chassis. But again, you get the aluminum, you get the carbon parts. So if that's something that's valuable to you and it's worth spending anywhere between $40 to $100, and the shipping is going to be a lot more because it comes from Japan, is where they ship from. So it's going to cost a little bit more for shipping. I think it's about $40 or so, or $40 or so. So just to kind of give you an expectation as to how much it will cost, as opposed to something like you get from Black Star Hobbies in the U.S. or from RC Mart with free shipping. Now the last car that we're going to go ahead and look at today, and we'll go ahead and do this. So we also have for Deagle Racing, we have our options of the TT02, the R31, and the TA05. And we're just going to say these are about $250 each, give or take after the shipping. The last car we're going to look at here is going to be the one that's most similar to mine, even though mine has a lot of upgrades and changes there. It's going to be the Yokomo Drift Package. Now, the Drift Package, this is not a rear-wheel drive ready chassis. Every chassis we just looked at is rear-wheel drive ready. So that means it has no front drive shafts, all the car is driven from the rear wheels, and all you need to do is get the electronics and whatnot to put in it. The Drift Package is a chassis that is all-wheel drive, but you can convert it to rear-wheel drive. Now you can convert any, well, not maybe any, but most all-wheel drive chassis to rear-wheel drive. The reason I bring up the Yokomo Drift Package in this video is because it's the most versatile chassis on the market, in my opinion. This is the only chassis where you can change the motor layout from anywhere from the front to the back, and almost an infinite amount of option parts and interchangeable parts that are available for this. So it's $106, so it's going to come in near the, we'll go ahead and put this over here, so Yokomo, we'll put Drift Package. That is $108, right? Alright, so for $108 we have that. Now again, this one is not ready to be driven as rear-wheel drive chassis. You need to buy parts to go with it, and it can actually easily become the most expensive chassis, like mine for instance. So we're going to take a look at some of the, there's some conversion parts for this chassis in particular that you can look at. So we'll do this here. I have another tab open. This is for RC Art, and I order a lot of parts through here. They're located in Japan. They do ship internationally. They have quite a huge selection here. So the main things you're going to need if you're going to convert a drift package to rear-wheel drive is going to be front Y-arms. And there's a bunch of different brands that make them. I use the Wrap-Up Next ones personally. You're going to want the 2.5 millimeter hinge pins. I just clicked on the black one because I like black, but it looks like they're sold out. Well, so is the red. But essentially this part here, it goes where the lower control arm would on the drift package, and then it gives you more clearance for your steering. So essentially the normal drift package might be limited between like 30, 35, 40 degrees of steering. This will let you go ahead and increase it maybe up higher to like 70 or 80 degrees that you really need for rear-wheel drive drifting. You're also going to need upper arms as well, so it's probably going to be another $100. So it's going to be about $200 at the very least to go ahead and get that car driving rear-wheel drive as a chassis alone. And I wouldn't recommend it unless either you have a friend who has one and they're familiar with it, or if you have some kind of support for setting up the chassis. But I recommend it on the fact that it's a car that you're probably not going to outgrow. You could keep it from the beginning to the end, recycle the parts, use the old parts to make a whole another chassis. So very versatile in that aspect. They also make full rear-wheel drive conversions. So there's like wrap up next. They make something called the FRD. This is the chassis I drive personally. It is a conversion which comes with the pretty much the motor plates that you see over here, the steering wipers and whatnot, and you can convert that into a rear-wheel drive front motor chassis. It's kind of pricey. It's probably the whole conversion. The conversion itself is about $300, and then you're gonna need some odds and end pieces. So you know, now you're looking at $300, $400, so it might be a little bit above your price range if you're looking to get into the hobby, but it's definitely one of the most versatile chassis out there. So we pretty much have our options there. So really you're looking at the MST fxx-ds, the 3 Racing Sakura D4, the Deagle Racing either TT02, R31, or T05, or if you really want to go ahead and put a lot of work into this, customize your chassis, make it whatever you want, you get the Yokomo Drift package that starts at 108, or it's actually 106, but we're rounding up, so all those are options. Now one of the things, there's also a Yokomo Drift package Type C, and it's actually the ideal conversion because of the way that it is designed. However, the Type C costs more. And you're going to end up swapping out the parts anyway, so I don't recommend getting the Type C. I recommend just getting, I believe it's called the DP8 is the model number. Let me go ahead and check here. I have a couple. I also have it on Amazon if you don't want to worry about international shipping. So the DP8, Yokomo Drift Package DP8 is going to be your best one to go ahead and start off with. Alright, so we have our chassis lined up there. Either of those are going to work. And now we're going to want to go ahead and take a look back at the things we were talking about earlier. So we have the chassis. Now you really need your battery, speed control, servo, remote receiver, and a gyro. Now, if we're going with the D4, you can get the gyro and the servo right out of the way. You get that bundle for $160, and you're most of the way there. I pulled up a couple other websites here, and I actually haven't looked at Blackstar's, what he offers in terms of electronics. So let's see, electronics and LEDs. He's got gyros. And if I'm not mistaken, the FXX does come with the gyro. Let me go double check on this. I believe the FXX, let's see, yep, includes LSD 2.0 gyro. So if you get the FXX, that also comes with the gyro. The Deagle Racing cars I know come with the gyro. The D4 might be the only one that does not come with the gyro, actually. So let's see here. Let's see, features, steering, drivetrain. As it doesn't say it requires gyro, oddly enough, but for now we're going to assume it does not come with the gyro since I don't see it listed anywhere and I don't see it pictured anywhere. So you will need a gyro for the D4. So gyro, so we'll take a look at Blackstar here. The LSD is one of the most traditional gyros you're going to see for $40. So you're going to be looking at about $40 for a gyro. And I highly recommend the MST LSD01. It's one of the most basic ones, but it does a great job. It works with almost every servo I've seen out there. There are some gyros that will not work with certain servos, but the MST is probably the one that I've seen that has the most that do work properly with it. They also have a new updated version of the 2.0. And I believe one comes in an aluminum case for another $10. So if you want to get a slightly newer one, if you want to get one with a couple more features or a little more bling factor, you have those available there as well. For your remote and your receiver, again, normally those come in a bundle. So if you're going on the cheap, Hobby King has some really great options there for anyone on a budget. And let me see here. I'm just going to go ahead and try and find some of the tabs I've opened here. This is one I pulled up here. This one's from Hobby Parts here. This is probably going to be the cheapest receiver transmitter combo I would recommend. It's only $40 and it actually has LCD screen on it and it comes with a receiver. So for $40 you have your receiver, you have your transmitter. It's a pretty good deal price wise. I've used one in person. The more you spend on it, obviously you're going to get a better steering feel for your car. Something that's a slight step up is a Futaba 3PL. So this is $100. You get it on Amazon with free shipping. It's probably one of the better budget ones I've used. It is a little bit old school in terms of design, but it functions really well, has a good steering feel to it. Probably the best steering feel, I would say, anything north of $200. So there's a bunch of other options there. If you already have one at home, you might as well just use one and go ahead and buy a second receiver for it and use that. But if you're getting into the hobby for the first time, either one of those would be a good option. So we'll just put a range here. We'll see about $40 to $100 for that. Okay. For a servo, there's a whole bunch of options you could go with. Some people will say that you need a high torque or a high speed servo, and maybe to an extent. I wouldn't go too cheap on the servo, just because the cheaper ones generally have an issue either burning out or just not having enough torque to actually move the steering effectively here. So again, we're on hobbyking.com looking for that, and actually I want to check Blackstar too to see if we have any servos listed. Alright, not seeing any there. Maybe it's under a different category. Let's see, RC Drift, bearing engine base. No, so we'll go ahead and let's take a look at Hobby King since we have that open over here. So we will look at speed controls. There we go, servos. And let's see, Futaba makes pretty good servos. But I know Bluebird makes some really cheap servos, so we'll take a look at that as a starting point here. And normally I recommend a low profile servo. The reason I do that is because a lot of the chassis that are out there, they only accept a low profile servo, which is slightly smaller, or it's just more convenient to fit it on with the batteries and whatnot. So I mean, you can get something like this for 20 bucks. It'll get the job done. You're probably going to want something with a little bit more torque here. So the stats that comes in here, it's going to be the speed. Pretty much the faster you see the speed and the voltage. 0.13. It's pretty reasonable. You don't really need too much torque for most chassis. It doesn't hurt to have a high speed or high torque servo, but you can start off with something like that and we'll go ahead and work. So we could budget anywhere between 20, go as high as $60 on that if you're on the high end. Alright, next up, speed controller. So speed controllers can vary pretty largely. I wouldn't recommend anything less than 120 amps. They have 60 amp ones that are going to be cheaper, but I definitely want to recommend it. I've actually used this one in the past. The thing is, the cheaper you go on your speed controller, on your servos, on any part really, the more likely it is to have issues, to burn out, to blow up. Well, not necessarily blow up, but have issues. So 50 bucks, this is for a Hobby King X-Car 120 amp. This works for censored and sensorless motors. Normally you're going to want a censored motor. It's a little bit smoother, it doesn't cog, and makes drifting a lot easier. So the fact that this supports both is great, because it gives you the option of even getting a cheaper motor and picking that up. And actually didn't put a category for motor here, so I'll put motor. So the ESC, you could say anywhere between 50, you could go into the hundreds if you want to get something that you're going to be reusing, and that'll be a great starting point. For motors, normally I'd recommend depending on your surface, anywhere between a 13.5 and a 10.5 should be good. If you're on concrete specifically, you might look into a 8.5 if you really want a lot of power, if you're in an open space. But generally anywhere between a 13 and a 10 should be good. So we'll take a look at motors here, and let's see what they have options. We're just looking at Hobby King here since they have some of the cheaper options here. So motors, let's see, car motors. Alright, and here's a couple of options here. So they have a Trackstar D-Spec, let's see, 8.5 turn, 7.5 turn, 10.5. Alright, so we got Turn G Trackstar here, 10.5 motor. This should have a 13.5 available here. It's about 40 bucks. So we'll say anywhere between 40 to 50. And this will definitely go ahead and do the job. Now this one, it's a censored motor. It's going to be the one that you're going to want to go for. You can get a sensor-less motor for less, but I really wouldn't recommend saving the money there if you're trying to save money. Now for the batteries, you're normally going to need a 2-cell or 2S LiPo. And those come in various sizes, and pretty much you're going to pay more the larger size, or if you want it in a hard pack. But I would definitely highly recommend Hobby King for their batteries as well. So we'll take a look at batteries and accessories. We're taking a look at LiPo. The Turnigy ones are extremely good. I've used those a whole bunch in the past. So we'll go ahead and we'll pick our 2-cell option here. And you are going to need to either learn how to solder or pick the correct connector for the soldering plug that you choose. But we're going to want a 2-cell. Normally you're going to want the square pack. And normally about 4,000 milliamps is the smallest I would say to go. 5,000 or 5,200 is going to be a better option. So something like this right here, it's 5,200 milliamp 2-cell. You don't really want to worry too much about the C. The C is essentially how fast it can put the power out. RC drifting doesn't require a whole bunch of power, so you don't need to worry too much about that. So we'll go ahead and give this a second for these guys to load over here. Alright, so this is going to be the cheaper one here, 31 bucks. It plugs right in. That's exactly the type that you're looking for here. So you look anywhere between $30. And then I also pulled up another one over here. I prefer this style because a couple things. You can either put bullets on whatever your ESC is and just plug it directly in, or if you want to swap it between a couple different plugs, you can just solder whatever end you want on it and do it that way. So this one's $42, so a little bit more there. But normally you're going to want a couple of packs anyway, so you might want to splurge on one and get a cheaper one just for a spare battery. And let's see, if we're missing anything here, we got the gyro, remote receiver, we got a servo, motor, speed control, and our battery. So that really sets up everything that we need there. Again, Hobby King I'd highly recommend for the cheaper electronics. If you're looking for something a little bit more expensive, RC Mart would be a great option. And actually, look, Blackstar does have a electronics section over here, and Blackstar is located in the U.S., located in Florida. They have extremely quick shipping times domestically, which is why I like to go to them a lot. And let's see what options they have here. So if we're trying to get everything from the same place, looks like there's a lot of motors that are sold out, unfortunately. They have a lot of great prices here, though. They have a 8.5. It's a little bit faster than we're looking for 45 bucks. This Speed Passion motor for $45 at 10.5, or even this one over here for $65 for the 13.5 would both be great options. Just unfortunately they're sold out at the moment. They also have some speed control options, but again, some of the cheaper ones are sold out at the moment. But if you do want to go all out, you could always go ahead and look at something like that, Tachyons and whatnot. And so, well, just to go ahead and kind of get a ballpark figure of what we're looking at when we get all these components. So we'll do the absolute cheapest one we can do. So that's going to be using the 3 racing combo at RC Mart. So that's $160, and so that already comes with a servo and a gyro. So you don't need to worry about those two things. So we're going to need still the remote, so we can go with the budget remote for $40 from Hobby Parts. We're going to need the motor and the ESC, so it's going to be 40 bucks for the motor, 50 bucks for the ESC, and then we'll say 30 bucks for a LiPo. So all in all, $320 is what you're looking at for a ready-to-go rear-wheel drive RC drift chassis. It has all the parts that are necessary there. Now, one of the arguments that you might get is, well, why not get like an all-wheel drive RC drift chassis, or why not get like an HPI Sprint 2, because my local hobby shop has them and all my friends drive them. So we'll go ahead and we'll pull up the HPI Sprint 2. I'm just going to pull up the first one that I see here, and let's see, actually let me find the actual retailer instead of HPI's website. So let's try Tower Hobbies here. And they don't have the price either. Okay, who has the price for this? Amazon. Alright. Perfect. Alright, so this is for a ready-to-run all-wheel drive drift car. So it's $240 free shipping. So you might be saying like, well, if I'm just getting the hobby, why not get the $240 Sprint 2 that they have in my local hobby shop that I could pick up and just go ahead and drive that? So there's a couple of differences between the all-wheel drive and the rear-wheel drive and HPIs and things like the brands I mentioned here. Most of the domestic brands, so if you're looking at like HPI, they don't really have that much of a market when it comes to RC drift cars. Yeah, they'll have some bodies for it. They'll have some wheels for it. I've seen that some will have a aluminum or carbon upgrade to them, but for the HPI, they really don't offer that many. And if it's a car that you're trying to convert to rear-wheel drive, they don't really convert that well since there aren't that many parts for them. If you don't care about realism, so I mean, drift cars or rear-wheel drive cars, it looks more like a real car when you're driving a rear-wheel drive RC drift car. If you don't care about that, or if you're not really interested in that particular spectrum of RC drift, then yeah, $240, everything in the package ready to go. It's not a bad deal. But again, if you're looking for realism and to have that rear-wheel drive experience, as opposed to a 50-50 car or a counter-steer car where the front wheels are driving it, then it's always an option for you. But I think that the rear-wheel drive cars are better options. If you want to try out an all-wheel drive and go to rear-wheel drive, I think the Combo Drift package is still a better value, in my opinion, in that aspect. Also, a lot of the parts that you're going to see come on this, they're not quite up to snuff with even the budget options that I put here. So I don't know if there's any more pictures of this here. I could probably find that on the HPI website. But normally the remote, let's see if we can find another one. Alright, here's the actual HPI page. So normally the remote, the electronics, the receiver, the battery, it's all going to be not superior quality. So it's cool that some of the stuff here is waterproof, but you can always buy waterproof electronics and pay a little bit more in that aspect. But the servos aren't going to be very strong. They're generally going to burn out pretty quickly. The speed controls are going to be completely lacking in features. The motor is a brushed motor, which doesn't really just deliver power smoothly. It's 15 turns, so it's even slower than the 13.5 or the 10.5 I recommended. And again, it's going to be primarily all plastic everywhere. So I'm hesitant to recommend this, but again, maybe if it's for a child or someone who just wants the I want it now factor, if I could go to my hobby shop and get it, it's definitely an option. But for $320, that's about what it's going to run you for a complete, ready to run rear-wheel drive RC drift car. Now, if you have any kind of questions, comments, anything like that, I'm more than happy to go ahead and make another video here. I have a couple of videos showing off my personal rear-wheel drive RC drift car. Because one of the things is when it comes to the rear-wheel drive RC drift cars, it's kind of like an addiction. If you're a car guy, you probably know. You might have a car and you'll put tint on it, and then after you put tint on it, you need an exhaust. And then after you get an exhaust, you need headers. And after you get headers, you need a turbo. And after you put a turbo on it, you need wheels and wider tires to support that, and other sporty mods like injectors. And I find our rear-wheel drive RC drift cars can be a lot like that, where you start with one thing and you upgrade it and you want to go ahead and change everything on your chassis. So this car here, again, this started off as a $108 drift package. This is probably one of the more extreme cars you'll see out there, but it went from a $108 drift package, now it's about $1,000, at least $1,000 into it. Rear-wheel drive RC drift car, has all the upgraded electronics, comes with an aluminum chassis plate, has carbon decks, and pretty much anything you could look for on it you could get on this. So again, this is going to be the absolute highest end of the spectrum, and generally if you're getting into the sport, it's not going to be the first thing you're going to go ahead and pick up. So I don't know how long this video went on for. I'm sure I talked for at least half an hour here, but hopefully it gives you all the information that you need. I will go ahead and upload the video. I will go ahead and set up the links as I can here for where you can find everything. Just again, recommended retailers here if you're purchasing anything. Stateside, highly recommend Black Star Hobbies. They have by far the best selection of MST parts and chassis available, and ridiculously quick shipping within the states and even outside. Another place, if you're looking, this is more so after you have got your chassis together, if you're looking for upgrade parts, if you're looking for bodies and whatnot. I also recommend Raikou Drift Shop. It's Romeo Alpha India Kilo Oscar Uniform Raikou driftshop.com. They have a bunch of options over here as well for things like wheels, stickers, option parts, all that. They have a great selection there. Again, Hobby King, if you're on the extreme budget, Hobby King has some of the best budget parts out there. They also have some of the best battery deals I've seen on the market, so that's hobbyking.com. The remote, we found that on Hobby Parts with a Z, .com. And then the Sakura D4 we found on rcmart.com with the bundle. I highly recommend that if you're, again, looking to get in at the lowest price point there, since it already comes with a bunch of the parts that you're going to need to build your RC drift car. They also have a whole bunch of other electronics, and probably buy everything directly from RC Mart as well. And then lastly, we have Broadtack or Deagle Racing. It's at broadtack.hk. It's easier to just Google the name of the cars. So Deagle Racing TA05, R31, TT02. It's much easier to find it than looking through their web store. And lastly, RC Art. I highly recommend for the more obscure parts when you're really on the advanced end of the spectrum. That's rc-art.net. So hopefully these links, these general price points, what you're going to be spending on the car, a little bit of information about them is going to help out. Again, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'll be more than happy to go ahead and get back to them. There's also a couple of Facebook groups I would recommend joining. So one of them, you can just type it in Facebook, is the RWD RC Society. This is a group on Facebook. This has lots of guys with rear-wheel drive RC drift cars. It's a great place to get general information, look at some cars that people are building and videos and whatnot. Also, I would recommend joining if you're looking to purchase a car secondhand or look to see what other people are selling. The RC Drift Marketplace group on Facebook. There's a whole bunch of people selling chassis on there, so you might be able to get something secondhand a little bit cheaper. I've actually seen a couple on there that are exceptionally well priced for some higher end chassis. Last thing, I just want to give a shout out to Street Brake Circuit, and you can go ahead and also find them on Facebook at facebook.com/Street Brake Circuit. That's where I drift here in Florida. It has a really great track there and some of the nicest guys you'll meet. So if ever you want to go ahead and take a look at a video, they're also on YouTube. Just type in Street Brake Circuit, and you should see a whole bunch of rear-wheel drive RC drift videos. So I just want to thank you guys for taking the time watching this video. I know it's a little bit long. It's very impromptu, but hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you can find the right rear-wheel drive RC chassis for you and join the hobby soon. So take care, and I hope you enjoyed the video.